In the tender compassion of our God, the dawn from on high shall break upon us, to shine on those who dwell in darkness and the shadow of death, and to guide our feet into the way of peace. Please be seated. May it be so. Good morning.
Good morning.
Oh, that's good. Once more. Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you. Oh, it's lovely. I'm Steve Blackmer. I am so pleased to be with you here this morning. I am here. I'm from New Hampshire. I am here thanks to the invitation of Anne and Reverend Norman MacLeod, who's been a friend for many years, to, with them, jointly lead the Wild Worship program that took place yesterday afternoon at the Norman Bird Sanctuary, to lead people into the peace of God as known in and through the natural world. It's a pleasure to be able, while I'm here, to share this morning with you. I come from New Hampshire, from a community called Church of the Woods, which meets, you might guess, in the woods. An Episcopal community, part of the Diocese of New Hampshire, that I founded in 2014 as for people who seek and find God in and through nature, which is what my life has been about. I came to the church, any church, to the Christian faith late in life, or well into my 50s, when, yes, please, let the children sing. Well into my 50s, before I ever set foot in a church. I was summoned through a series of encounters with God, as you might expect, in the wilderness, which led my being called to become a priest. So I left my work. I was working in conservation, forest conservation. Went to Yale Divinity School in my mid-50s, was ordained, and when I returned to New Hampshire, I was alerted by God that I was being charged with starting a church in the woods. And I literally walked into this patch of woods, and a voice came and said, "Start a church." And I said, "You mean a woods church?" I could do a woods church. What's a woods church? But the voice didn't answer and left that. This is how God works. My job, your job is to figure that out, God said in God's silence. And so I did. I retired from that last fall and am now embarking on a next phase of life, which will be involved in writing a book about this experience and having the opportunity to come and speak with you. So here we are, Christ the King Sunday, and our texts give us several different ways of looking at, of kind of inquiring into the nature of God, nature of Christ, specifically the nature of Christ. So I want to explore today the nature of Christ through these four readings, and then come back and reflect a little bit on what these readings may be telling us. So our first, from the book of Jeremiah, he's complaining, he's woe to the shepherds who destroy and scatter the sheep. It's a complaint of God's complaint about his shepherds. And he says, I will raise up shepherds over the shepherds. I will be the shepherd over the shepherds over the shepherds, because the shepherds have lost the sheep. Bad job, shepherds. So there we have this wonderful image, God as shepherd over the shepherds. A few verses later in the same chapter, there's another expression of God from Jeremiah. I love Jeremiah. Am I a God nearby, says the Lord, and not a God far off? Who can hide in secret places so that I cannot see them? Do I not fill heaven and earth? Do I not fill heaven and earth? We'll come back to this. Then, the place of the skull, where Jesus is crucified, Golgotha. And the soldiers mock him. If you are king of the Jews, save yourself. An inscription over him read, "This is the King of the Jews." In another gospel, it must be in Matthew's, the question is, "Are you king of the Jews?" You say I am. But Jesus himself doesn't claim that, but it's, "Are you the king of the Jews?" And today, Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom. Truly, I tell you, today you will be with me in paradise. So a different kind of expression. This God, this king figure who on the cross sacrifices himself that we may have abundant life. So this sacrificial God, sacrificial king who offers himself that the world may live. So a very different kind of image of God from a shepherd. Then this letter of Paul to the Colossians, I love this. He is the image, he, Christ, is the image of the invisible God, the firstborn of all creation. For in him all things in heaven and on earth were created, things visible and invisible, whether thrones or dominions or rulers or power. All things, including those, have been created through him and for him. He himself is before all things, and in him all things hold together. Now here we have an expression, a deep theological insight into the nature of Christ as this image of God, the pattern through which everything that exists has come into being. This is the very first expression in the Christian tradition of what we later come to know as the second person of the Trinity, a little theological exploration here. The Logos, which gets expounded further in the Gospel of John. In the beginning was the Word. I'm showing you, I know you know these words. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. All things came into being through him, and without him not one thing came into being. John gets that from this passage and from Paul's insight. Paul was writing probably 30 or 40 years before John came along. Paul is the very first person in the world, St. Paul, who understands this nature of Christ and has the theological sophistication. Remember, he is a Jew. He is a good, faithful Jew. He has the theological sophistication and the spiritual insight to say, whoa, there's something really, really big going on here with this person of Jesus, the person of Jesus who is the human representation, the human incarnation of this eternal Christ. Somehow, Paul, through his own mystical experiences, the road to Damascus, he gets knocked off his horse, blinded. God speaks to him, or Jesus speaks to him and says, "Why are you persecuting me?" And somewhere in that experience, Paul is infused, mystically infused, with this understanding of the nature of Christ, with the nature of all reality, and profoundly has shaped the next 2,000 years, Paul's insight on that. But this is the very first expression in the biblical tradition of that insight. All things in heaven and earth were created in and through the Christ. So here we are today, Christ the King. And I have to confess to you, I don't like Christ the King as this final celebration of the church year. This last Sunday, it's the end of the church calendar. Next Sunday, we step into the season of Advent, which I adore. There's kind of the beginning, the new beginning, when the Spirit descends and enters into Mary, and she's carrying a child. I mean, this is truly extraordinary story. But today we're wrapping up the year, the ecclesial, the church calendar year. Christ the King Sunday is a recent invention. It's only 100 years old, created by Pope Leo XI in the 1920s, out of deep concern for a world fractured by the rise of communism in Russia. It's right after the Russian Revolution, emerging questions of fascism in Germany, evolving out of the end of the First World War, the boom of the Roaring '20s. Little do they know, the Depression is just a few years later. But they're not yet there. Good times for everybody. And so a deep concern among the papacy and other religious leaders about the secularization of the world. So Pope Leo comes up with this idea, oh great, we'll create a Sunday that says, no, Christ is the king. Really, Christ is the king. No, it doesn't work for me. I don't love that as kind of the culmination of the church year. So I want to present an alternative ending to the church year, which is taken directly from our other reading of Zechariah. One of the things I love about this is it takes us also toward the season of Advent. Zechariah is the father of John the Baptist, and his wife Elizabeth is Mary's cousin. So you may remember the story, it must be in Luke. Mary learns she's pregnant. Not just pregnant, right? I mean, the Spirit has descended upon her and she is carrying a divine child. Truly. I'll never get enough of that story. And she runs to the hills to go visit her cousin Elizabeth, who's, I think, in her fourth or fifth month of pregnancy. And so, Elizabeth, help me. Anyway, so Zechariah is Elizabeth's husband, who, in that moment, when Mary comes to visit, falls mute. He's unable to speak because an angel has visited him and said, this child, Elizabeth's child, will be John. Then, when Jesus is born, they bring him to the temple on the 8th day to be consecrated to God. And all of a sudden, Zechariah gets his voice back. And he speaks, among other things, these words: in the tender compassion of our God, the dawn from on high will break upon us, to shine on those who dwell in darkness and the shadow of death, and to guide our feet into the way of peace. Beautiful words. Say, the dawn from on high. Saying, here is a new beginning. Here is the light of the world coming into existence. It takes us back to the book of Genesis. In the beginning, darkness covered the face of the earth, and all was formless chaos. God said, do it with me, let there be light. And there was light. So Zechariah is echoing. He's a priest. He knows the story. He is echoing there. So there is the beginning. There is light. So I'm going to shift here from theology to science. One of the amazing things about this story, this Christian story, is that it anticipates, intuits our scientific understanding of how the world works. In the beginning, there was the Big Bang, from which, in an incomprehensible instant, all the energy and matter and light that is present in the universe began to flow into being. The dawn from on high breaks upon us. And from that initial flash, all the stars began to be born, and then all the planets began to be born, and then Earth began to be born, and then life began to appear on Earth, and bacteria and fungi and fish and plants and monkeys and proto-humans and Jesus and then us. And everything we see around us. Touch something. Anything you're touching. Whatever you're touching, it came from that. Everything. The entire universe poured out in that instance. God revealed God's self. That initial burst is the first revelation of the divine in material, energetic form, in kind of what we would call real. Not the invisible God, the visible, manifest, incarnate nature of Christ begins to show up in front of us. And as soon as we recognize that, we remember, we have the chance to remember that we live in a world which is nothing but God's self. Everything. I mean, I really mean this literally. Everything that exists, all matter, all energy, all form, all shape, all ideas, emerge from that moment in time. Time itself emerges in that moment. So truly we live in a world that is filled by God. How Paul understood this. All things in heaven and on earth were created, things visible and invisible. All things have been created through him and for him. He himself is before all things, and in him all things hold together. Somehow Paul intuited that. Somehow those people who wrote the book of Genesis intuited that. Science confirms it and explains how this happens in the world of matter and energy. So we live in this world that is filled with God, and the direct first revelation of that to us to this day, every morning, is the sunrise, is the soil under our feet, is the trees around us, the break after 8 o'clock, the deer and the turkeys crossing the roads, the leaves that fall, the influenzas that come. Everything. We live in this world infused by God. Whether we believe in God or not, it doesn't matter, because the revelation is still there. So when I take people out into the woods, we are having that direct experience of God. And we live in a world that is starved for encounters with God. Starving. Our job as people of the church is to lead others, is to show others the way into God. And let me suggest to you that the first way in is the reality of the natural world around us. Everybody gets it. Everybody gets it. And for many people, like me, it is that experience which leads me here, not the other way around. It is the direct encounter with God in and through the created natural world that led me to church, where God spoke in more formal, theological, and liturgical languages. In the tender compassion of our God, the dawn from on high shall break upon us, to shine on those who dwell in darkness and the shadow of death, and to guide our feet into the way of peace. We live in troubled times. People always live in troubled times. But there is light in the world. There is light. And the name of that light is Christ. Thank you.